Welcome to this edition of Morgan You Asked For podcast, May 13th. We are a little bit early this week. It's a Monday night, but just with Trevor's schedule and then my schedule this week, I'm going to be gone a couple days in Muscatine for a golf tournament. So it just works better tonight. Cleveland and the Celtics are playing. I actually was watching some of that, but it looked like Celtics were kind of take that. So I actually turned on the Tom Brady roast. Have you watched any of that, Trevor?
Yeah, but I heard it's really good. So I've seen clips of it. I've heard people talking about it, and I do plan to watch it probably this week. But I've heard it's really good though.
Yeah, it's good. I'm 1 hour and 9 minutes in. It's almost 3 hours long. So I'm obviously not through very many. Nikki Glazier was good. Jeff Ross is good. They're professional roasters. They should be good. Randy Moss is pretty good. Drew Bledsoe was, obviously those two aren't comedians. So is every joke hit exactly? No. But, kind of the jokes they made about Tom Brady and themselves, it was good. Kevin Hart was a host, and I did. I've liked it so far. Um, I hear coming up there's some that maybe aren't as good, but Kim Kardashian, I don't know why she did it or what the reasoning for her on there was, but she's not a professional comedian, so to say she's going to get up there and every joke's going to land perfectly it's just not true. I guess your expectations have to be a little bit realistic, I think, on some of those.
Yeah, I heard the athletes did a really good job. Obviously, as you said, not every joke lands, but no, I'm looking forward to watching. I hear Drew Bledsoe was really good, like you
Yep.
said. Yeah, and Kim Kardashian, I'm sure she got paid a nice amount of money just to show
Yeah.
up. And if her
Right.
jokes are good, whatever. But I'm sure they all got a nice paycheck. Hers was probably a little bit more than others.
Oh, absolutely. We're about 2 minutes in, and that's 2 minutes longer than it probably should have taken. But the story of the night is Lisa Bluder, Hawkeye coach, retiring. Now, a couple things with that. She is 62 or 63 years old, so it's not. I don't think this is a huge surprise. Timing is a little bit curious, but I think this has been in the works. I'm going to say the decision was not made today. It was not made yesterday. It probably wasn't even made last week. It just took a little time for this to happen because they went so quickly to hiring Jan Jensen. This was not done today, or I would even say this week. What do you think, Trev?
Let's wonder if this decision was made, if she let the school know before the season started, this is going to be my last year. And she probably gave her recommendation to Jan. But I wouldn't be surprised by this. It's kind of weird. Halfway through the season or three quarters through the way, I was talking about this is the end of an era. I was really talking about the players, but should have seen this coming given her age and the NIL, the transfer portal, all this stuff that we've talked about. Nick Saban's talked about it. Not that she's on the same level of accomplishments, but age wise, in my opinion, she's going out on top in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about the stress that Caitlin Clark has been under the past couple of years, rightfully so. But we never talked about the stress or pressure that Lisa Bluder had been under. And maybe she thought, I've had enough of this. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if they had talks before the season started that this was just going to be the plan.
Yeah, I think if it was done before the season, I do think it would have happened quicker. I mean, we're a little bit over a month out from when they lost in the championship game, so I'm going to say it wasn't before the season. I mean, obviously, I don't know.
Maybe they had discussions about possibilities. Maybe that's a better way
Well,
to put it.
yeah, I mean, I think you have to have transition plans at all times, and then I also think some of it is she might just, even if it wasn't 100% her time to go, maybe she thought it was time for Jan Jensen to get that job. And in doing it at this time and not, April 7th, a week after, where there's several coaching searches going on and they could go do a coaching search, doing it at this time, much like when Bob Stoops retired at Oklahoma, essentially you have to just promote from within. And obviously, I do think Jan Jensen deserves this job, has earned this job. This isn't a situation where Jan Jensen's not ready for this. She's very much ready. But it would be hard to go hire a Jenny Bronchek. I mean, would be the next name, or I think the first name you'd call after Jan Jensen to see if she would want to come back to Iowa and be the head coach. But that just puts her and Oklahoma in a really tough spot as well if you go get her at this time. And then there's just a trickle down effect because Oklahoma goes and hires somebody. And, this is Beth Gett's first hire, which again makes me think this was a little bit planned because she wants to make these hires. We talked about this when she got hired. More than likely in the next few years, she's going to have to make several of these hires. This is her first one, and she made it very smooth transition, very much just passing of the torch to Jan Jensen. And you have to do this because I think she has the job and has earned the job. But all the Hawkeye players now have 30 days to transfer. They are free game. So if you don't think some team is calling Hannah Stolke tonight and offering her some money, you're all crazy. And Kylie Fierbach and McCabe and Sydney Falter and every one of those players is getting calls to see if you're interested in coming somewhere else because they are free agents now.
I hope with with Jan getting the job,
Yeah.
hopefully the players that are already on the team will be more likely to stay because they know her and like her. I would hope.
Yep. Yeah.
The real thing I wonder about is the Addison deal in 2025. Is she still going to come? And some of the other big recruits. I wouldn't be surprised if they back out now. They probably had to know a little bit in the back of their mind that Lisa Bluder was getting up there in age. But with Jan being the next coach, maybe Caitlin Clark will vouch for her with some of the recruits, especially that Addison coming in 25. Yep. So you're right, though. Hannah Stolke and Sydney Falter will be, there'll be some teams out there that'll probably offer them some money. I hope they stay. I'd hate to see either one of them leave or both. So that's going to be the interesting thing, as you said, over the next 30 days.
Yeah, you may not hear anything for 15 days, and then you think everything's hunky dory, and then all of a sudden it switches. And that's why Jan Jensen kept the job as well. And I think Caitlin Clark has already came out and said, no brainer, it had to go to her. She deserves it. Vote of confidence. I mean, and I 100% agree. It was her job, and I've said it 3 times already now in the last 3 minutes. But and it, just me personally with her, she's from Kimballton, Iowa, which is not very far from where I grew up. We played Elkhorn, Kimballton, and everything. She's quite a bit older than I am, so I didn't watch her play or anything. But just being from small town Iowa, small town West Central Iowa, and I think she has been with Lisa Bluder for 33 years as a player and a coach, which is just amazing. And she's had opportunities. Might have been able to stay at Drake and been the head coach. I have no idea, when they left 24 years ago. I don't know if that was, or she just wanted to go to Iowa with Lisa Bluder, but she's had opportunities before. And who was I? Oh, I was listening to Chris Williams and Andrew Downs, kind of a instant reaction to this on Iowa Everywhere. And Andrew Downs was like, he kind of thought of her as Phil Parker. Obviously had opportunities, could have left, but, maybe doesn't want to be the face of the program, just wants to coach basketball. Just like Phil Parker just wants to coach. He doesn't want to go do the CEO stuff, the shake hands, meet with donors. Not that you don't do any of that. You do as an assistant, but you don't have to go to every iClub event. There's just lots of things that head coaches have to do that assistants that don't have anything to do with coaching the actual sport.
She stuck with Bluder for a long time, as you mentioned. She probably had opportunities over the years, whatever they might have been, high school, smaller colleges, or even D1. So I'm glad it's her. I think it should be a smooth transition. I hope they give her a full 3 or 4 years,
Mhm.
outside of anything crazy going on. There's going to be a drop off this year, and I hope this coming season, if the record isn't what we want it to be, I hope fans don't just all of a sudden go, well, we need a new coach.
Yeah.
Like we're losing one of the best players of all time. We have to expect a drop off. There needs to be a little bit of a grace period there.
Right. And that's the only issue with Jan Jensen taking this job is, and I think, and you touched on this earlier, Trev, I think we do lose sight of how much pressure Lisa Bluder was under and felt. Those, she's actually older than all these girls as moms now, almost grandma age to these girls. And I guarantee, she tried to do the best she could to deflect everything she could and take it herself in these last 2 or 3 years because now these girls are starting to get paid, but she's like, I'm the face of the program. I'm a professional. I've done this for 30 years. These girls are 19, 20, 21 years old, just as any parent slash grandparent or anybody that just cares about people in their lives want to protect them and make it as easy as you can for them. And I think it got to her. I mean, I think you could see it, especially at the end of this year where she was wore out. And then also just she is going out on top. She's made the championship game 2 years in a row, losing the player of the century for women's basketball, not just Iowa women's basketball, but women's basketball in general. And there really is nowhere to go but down. And she's 63 years old and said, I'm going to retire.
Yeah, like I said, we probably should have seen this coming. I
Yeah,
didn't. It should have been on my radar. We've watched sports long enough. When
right,
someone gets that age, especially after a run like this that you just mentioned, the past 2 years specifically, she probably had to be under a lot of pressure that she didn't let anybody know about or let anybody see because she's been doing it for forever
right.
essentially. So she did a great job. Just thankful for everything she's done for the Iowa Hawkeyes, especially the last 2 years. It was a fun ride. We talked about that the past few months or so, and like I said, should have seen this coming, but wasn't even on my radar.
I heard this today too. When Keith Murphy was doing his, little blurb on it on the news. She's the all-time Big Ten winningest coach. That's unbelievable. I mean, coaches just don't stay 24 years, which is how you can do that. But that was just a stat that I hadn't heard of or thought of, that she's has the most wins in Big Ten history.
Yeah, she was at Iowa forever. Kirk's been at Iowa forever. That's a whole nother, a whole nother subject that we could say for another time. But I wrote down she was a 3-time Big Ten Coach of the Year, 5-time Big Ten tournament champions.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as you said, obviously been to back-to-back national title games the past 2 seasons. And yeah, I think everyone in the state of Iowa would say she's going out on top. People outside the state of Iowa would say, well, she lost 2 in a row. I mean, again, we're not UConn or Tennessee or South Carolina. So she's going out on top, and good for her. I hope the transition is smooth to Jan. I think it will be. But again, for Jan, I hope she's given a little bit of a grace period because the first year there, I don't know what to expect. I'm excited to see Stolke and Sydney Falter and those girls do their own thing. But when you lose, like you said, an all-time player like that, I don't know what the drop-off's going to be, but there will be a drop-off.
Yeah, there's only one step up, and it's a really, really hard step. And there's UConn and South Carolina and USC and UCLA are going to have big time steps to get where you want to go to get that last step.
Yeah, those should be the. I mean, South Carolina, UConn, USC, UCLA. Those should be the favorites going into next season.
And
Obviously, South Carolina's already done it, but some of these other teams, of course,
right,
UConn's won many over the years, but
right,
they fell a
and
little bit short
and
this season.
in your own state, Iowa State preseason is going to be ranked well ahead of Iowa. and they've stacked their team as well as they have. I don't know if they're quite, national championship contenders, but they're going to be contending for a Big 12 title, contending for Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on paper, Iowa State, I think anything short of a Sweet 16 as of right now today would probably be a little bit of a disappointment. Now we'll see how the season goes and how the players gel together. But yeah, Iowa State is going to be ranked higher than Iowa. Probably should, of course. But it should be a fun season coming up in the fall when basketball starts back up. I'm looking forward to both Iowa and Iowa State. Now that Caitlin Clark's gone, I mean, it kind of sucks in a way because we'll never see that again. But at the same time, some of these other girls get to write their own story.
Yeah, the story will just be different. Doesn't mean it's better, worse, whatever. The story is just going to be different because your lead character is different, and then just the phenomena. The phenom is gone, and so what are they going to do now?
Yeah, it'll definitely, Paige Beckers, Juju at USC, Kiki Rice there at UCLA. Talking about the documentary a little bit. There's other girls now that it's time for them to take the reins.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and transition to just a couple more things. One, I saw Indiana Fever on their social media, which I never thought in my wildest dreams I'd be following a WNBA team on any of that stuff, but I do. Got on their first chartered flight today to get to the game. And like for Caitlin Clark, she doesn't know any different because she's Iowa flies charter everywhere. And so she only had to, I think, one preseason game on a commercial flight, which she does take commercial flights as well in her own life, I'm sure. But for the veterans that have done it for years and years, a commercial flight, this is a great move for the WNBA and needed because these girls are, I just think of myself in an airplane. I'm 5'7". I don't have super long legs. It's not comfortable for me. These girls are all Caitlin Clark's 6 foot. Carmela Cordosa is 6'7". A lot of girls are 6'2", 6'4" in that area. It's just not comfortable. And their bodies are what makes them money. So you have to treat them correctly and then just not the extra time in an airport, which is another huge aspect of their daily lives and to be able to perform in optimal condition.
You're right. They're tall physical athletes, and average Joes like me and you, when we go to an airport to get on a plane, we haven't been practicing all week or just got done playing in a basketball game. We're just going to the airport. So it is nice to see they all looked like they're having a great time on the flight. I follow the same social medias, I'm sure you do. So it's the Caitlin Clark effect. It's if you're those girls or any other women in the WNBA, you got to be happy about it. I mean, this is just a start. I mean, the season hasn't even officially started yet, and there's already big things happening.
Was there any games tonight, or does everything start tomorrow?
I don't think there was any games tonight because I think today was like the last cut down day. I don't know that for sure. I could be wrong, but tomorrow is the regular season starts up with the Indiana Fever playing at I think 6:30 Iowa time. You and I talked about that last week, so it should be on ESPN2. But I believe today was like the final cut down day.
Absolutely. I'm headed to Muscatine with my golf team, and after we do our practice round, we're going to go to a restaurant, and we're going to, have supper and watch the game. I mean, and who would have thought that? Even last year.
Even just a few months ago, who would have
Right.
thought that you would even be doing that? So yeah, it's
and there's going to be NBA playoff games on, and they'll be on, I'm sure. I hope. I guess place I choose, I hope has a lot of TVs, and hope they're on.
Yeah, it's the momentum is carrying over. You and I talked about momentum. The momentum is still going. So again, it's up to the WNBA, the sponsors, the TVs to take advantage of it and keep it going because you don't want to lose it.
Yeah. Speaking of the TV, let's move on to the Full Court Press documentary. First 2 episodes are out. I did watch them on Sunday morning. First, just a great documentary. All three ladies, phenomenal. Yes, we're a little more biased and interested in the Caitlin Clark part of it, but they each have their own story. They're both, or all three of them are, obviously two of them are now in the WNBA, and Kiki Rice will be coming back to UCLA. Did not realize who she was in the DC area and who she related to and her connections to former President Obama, and Susan Rice is her aunt. Her parents are Yale graduates. Obviously they're nonprofit. DC went to the same school as the Obama girls and Hillary Clinton. And just her life. And then you look at Carmela Cardoso, has a completely different life. Grew up in the poor part of Brazil, on the streets, just fighting to live, and then made a choice. She was 5'10" at 10 years old, I think they said on that. And at 15, moved to the United States by herself. I mean, obviously had some family and stuff, but, without her sisters and her mom. And went to Syracuse, made the transfer to South Carolina, became one of the best players and drafted very, very high, and going to make a name for herself in the WNBA and change her family's future. And that's what makes sports great, those two situations. And then I would say Caitlin Clark is right in the middle. She didn't obviously grow up poor, but I don't think she came from the same life as Kiki Rice either. She went to Dowling Catholic. She's from West Des Moines, lives in a nice house, mom and dad, good jobs. But that's what makes sports great. Doesn't matter your race, your creed, your religion, where you grew up. You make the most of your situation, you can get rewarded.
The documentary is great, just like everything Peyton Manning does. ESPN, they always do a good job with all the stuff. Most of the stuff with Caitlin Clark, we already knew. Yep. There was some stuff behind the scenes stuff that you don't get to see from a telecast on a game day. But yeah, for Cardoso coming from Brazil, her family was poor. That had to be pretty scary for her to move to the United States, just leaving her entire family behind. And then Kiki Rice with her whole family, the background, the success that they've had. So it's 3 different programs, 3 different people, 3 different backgrounds, and it's really well done. And right. Actually, all four episodes are actually out. I've watched it twice now.
all 4 are out now.
They it depends on what you use for streaming and stuff, but I've worked out the past couple of days and watched them, so it's great from the beginning to end.
Yeah, and so I watched the first 2. So
yeah, it's 3 and 4 are just as good. Really well done. Caitlin Clark obviously committed to Notre Dame to start.
Right.
Her parents talked about getting offers in 7th grade, and they were like, yeah, no way, we're not doing that. Her brother had to get home early to get the mail to hide it from her, just to not be a distraction. Because again, she was in 7th and 8th grade, and her parents didn't think that was something that she needed to be dealing with at that age.
Yeah, and that's where, she, and we've talked about this, the recruiting class, she was, I think, 3 or 4. She was recruited by everybody. I mean, and she was one of the best players. You don't get that attention in 7th and 8th grade without being special. Now, she continued to get more special and more special, but she was special from the time she was young. It was very obvious how good she was going to be.
Yeah, that whole class, you've seen the pictures on social media. They all were highly recruited, and they all had a bunch of success, and most of them are the WNBA now. Paige is still at UConn, but they're still doing great. And yeah, the documentary is really well done. The second episode toward the end, the Nebraska game, yep, I thought was interesting. And of course, there was people that didn't like the language there at the end of the second episode. And hey, this is real life, like I always say. I mean, this is high stakes. So I loved it personally. I know some
right, and that's
may not have, but
and I was watching that with Tyler, and we've talked about this. He goes to Iowa State games. He's seen it hurt all. He's 11 years old. I'm sure he says it on the playground, just whatever. But I also, as a coach, and I coach, high school, and I know it's different, but I don't know if people understand what is really said in those situations. I guess I always have. I went to Iowa State. I was part of the football program, heard it all, seen it all. It does not faze me one bit. And I think just the way coaching is done now at the high school level and the expectations where, yes, is every word said correctly all the time? Absolutely not. But it's definitely, I would say, you know, way toned down compared to where it used to be 10, 15 years ago. But I don't think college is toned down. And so I think sometimes these kids that aren't exposed to that, I'm not saying it's good or bad, aren't exposed to that in high school, and then they get to college and see that, they don't know how to handle it. And it's really hard for them. And that's where sometimes the transfer thing is good because that situation is not good for that person, or it might be just not be good for even, the coach, for the kid. And that's where the transfer portal is great. When you go there, you find out it's just not for you. And, and I know, there's some people are like, coach cusses too much, or, Caitlin cusses too much. But if you sat in front row of the NBA in these playoffs, you would be amazed what you hear.
A college football game or a NFL game and
right,
listen
which
to
no
the drunk
fans
people
are
around
close
you.
enough for football to understand what happens in football. But if you sat in the front row of the NBA playoffs, you would be amazed what is said.
Yeah, and speaking of the transfer portal, like you said, some kids might come from high schools that they're not used to hearing that. That is a situation where it's good, where maybe a coach is just to shoot, real hard on players. A nice way to put it, and they're not used to it, and they can transfer. Other coaches coach a little bit differently, but yeah, as far as the language goes, you mentioned your son listening to that. I was a kid once too. I think by the time you're 7 or 8 years old, you've heard just about every cuss word out there. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. Doesn't mean you should say it or repeat
Right.
it. But to think that these kids haven't heard this before multiple times on the playground or in the hallways at school, I would say you're probably a little naive.
Right. I'll be honest. I've never heard Tyler say a cuss word, but I know he's heard it. And to me, if someone come up and said Tyler said this, I'd believe. Yeah, I'm sure he did.
We've all, yeah, when we were young, you hear it, someone else says it, and you think you're going to be cool and say it. I mean, it's just part of being a kid. So, I'm not saying that, the show should be full of F bombs or anything like that. And there aren't a ton of them, but there are some. And I think it opened the eyes of some people that didn't realize they think of the women's game as just being nice and all this. And it goes back to what I said last year with the Angel Reese pointing at her ring finger, that drama. I remember saying I thought that was probably the most important moment in women's history. And then I think episode 3, which you haven't seen yet, but this happens. Obviously, the LSU South Carolina game where Cardoso pushes the girl down.
Mm-hmm.
They're in the championship game. And of course, a bunch of the do-gooders online say you can't do that. I love it. Yep. I'm with Cardoso. If I see one of my teammates getting pushed, I'm going and pushing right back. I don't care about cheap shots or any of that. So I love it. But episodes 3 and 4 are just as good as 1 and 2.
Very good. I'll probably have to tune into that later this week.
So before we move on, I just want to talk. Did you watch Caitlin Clark's second preseason game at all? I thought you mentioned
I did not watch that one at all. I watched a little bit of the first one. Not real. I mean, not much highlights and stuff. But second one, I didn't really even watch the highlights. I'll be honest. So
okay, so this will probably come to an end of our WNBA talk and all this. But to me, I'll double down on what Cheryl Swoop said. She said the pace of the game is going to be too quick for Caitlin, or Caitlin's going to have to get used to it. From 2 preseason games, and that's all I have to go off of. I think the game's way too slow for Caitlin. She wants to press the issue. She wants to push the ball down the court, and her teammates there is no pace of play out there right now. And I think it goes what I text you. A lot of these young players, there's only about 2 weeks of practice and 2 preseason games after they're drafted. There's hardly any time for these women to make an impression on the team, and there's a lot of solo ball going on out there. There's no chemistry from that second preseason game that I saw, and I told you I was going to have a controversial take. I think right now, if you could have 2 Caitlin Clarks on the court at the same time in a hypothetical world, I think if you put the Iowa women out there right now, today, versus the Indiana Fever, I think it'd be a ball game. because the Iowa women have chemistry. They know where they're going. Now, as the season goes on, I would obviously take the Indiana Fever in a route probably, but there's no chemistry right now compared to watching her and just everybody else at Iowa over the years.
And I do tend to agree with that because her assist numbers are not real good through the first two games, and they're missing shots. And the girls, we all kind of assume that they'd be better player, and they are better players. Aaliyah Boston is better than any post player, better than who was the Stolke, and better than who was the one before her last Zana. What was her name?
Dono.
Yep. She's better than them.
Mm-hmm.
But those two girls have learned over the years how Caitlin Clark's going to play and would get most of them. They don't get them all, but would get most of them. And I agree. Probably these first 5 games, I probably agree with you because, again, you have another WNBA player in Kate Martin. So you got 2 WNBA players in your lineup, and then Stolke's quicker, and she runs up and down the floor. Iowa scored 100 points every game, and if he played WNBA time, he'd score way over 100. I agree with you. Now, end of the year, no chance. And I think you said probably in a blowout, the Fever win, because give them 2 months to work together, they'll get better and better every day.
It's not a lot of time, and we've talked about, a lot of people have talked about the pay, the flights, all this stuff that people feel sorry for them or they argue against because it's a business that, as we've talked about. The one area where I actually do feel bad for these women, especially the young players, is you get drafted, you have 2 weeks to make a roster. It's not a lot of time. I mean, if you have a bad 2 or 3 day stretch of practices, that could be it. You're cut. So I would hope in the coming years they have more weeks of practice and maybe some more preseason games.
Yeah, the problem is they want to play most of the time when the NBA's not playing and the least amount against football. And so if you would start June 1 to give them a month of practice, let's just say a month of practice, well, that just puts you that much later against football, and you got no chance for TV.
I don't know how you do it. I don't know if the WNBA and women's college basketball could come together, and women's college basketball starts 2 weeks earlier.
Right.
Or I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing spitballs out there.
Yeah.
Instead
of being done April 3rd or whatever, right about that same time as the men, maybe they're done, right before the men's tournament even starts, that March 15th area. Like you said, that give them at least 2 weeks.
Yeah, a little extra time. I don't know if that would really help all that much. I'm sure it's possible. There's a lot of different things that have to go into that. But the final thing on Caitlin Clark, as I was looking on DraftKings at some of her bets for the season, and so what DraftKings in Vegas is saying, they're expecting her to score about 21.6 points per game this year and about 6.6 or 6.9 assists. So I didn't know if you and I wanted to predict her rookie stat line and see who's closest at the end of the year.
So 21
points, assists, and rebounds. I figured we'll just keep it to those 3.
Okay, I'm gonna say you want me to write these down? I'll get my
Sure. Yeah, we
yeah.
both can. Yeah, but Vegas had it 21. I think 21.3 on points and then 6.6 on assists. I think it was. I don't think they had one for rebounds, so we'll just have to make that one up on our own. But that gives you an idea of what Vegas is thinking at least. And it was even money for both of them. Or not even money, minus 110, I should say.
Right. Okay. So, all right, Caitlin Clark, 2024 rookie stats predictions. Okay. Points, assists, rebounds. Trevor, Ryan. Okay. All right.
Want me to start with points?
Yep, I'll let you go with points first.
All right, I'm going to go 23.2.
23.2. Okay. I was going to go 22.5.
All right, so we're close.
Yep. Okay. And then I'll go assists first. I'm going to go 6.1. I like that number by the Vegas.
I'm going to go 7.8.
Okay.
I think your assist should pick up as the season goes, but we'll see. And then let's go rebounds last.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. You can go first on that one.
I'm probably going to go a little bit higher. I think I'm going a little bit higher because she had some good rebounds last game. And I don't know if we talked about this at the end of last season or the Iowa regular season, I should say, but I'm going to go 4.7 rebounds per game. She's got long arms and she gets more rebounds sometimes than I think people realize. So I'm going to go a little bit aggressive on the rebounds.
So what would you say again?
4.7.
Okay. You're not going near aggressive enough. I'm going up. I'm going about 6. I'm going to go 6.
Rebound. Oh, you are? Okay. I thought
I'm going up a little bit.
Was, okay, I like it. Because I think
I do.
Actually,
I think that's an underrated part of her game, actually.
Okay, so we're on the same page there. I wish I would have been a little more aggressive. No,
I'd say you were aggressive, and then you said your number. I'm like, well, that's not super aggressive.
Yeah, maybe it's not. That might have been a little conservative, actually. But yeah, I think rebounding is one of the underrated parts of her game. So yeah, we'll see how we do. I've already bet her to win the MVP at 12-1. There's some other bets too. If she breaks the scoring record, I think it's 53 or 54 points in a game. I haven't bet that, but I think it's 30-1 on that. And then the last Vegas stat I remember was her average threes throughout the season is 3.3 over under, which I think that's pretty good. I would, boy, overs 4 a game. I don't know what I'd do on that one. Probably over if I'm going about 24 points a game.
Yeah, to get that many points, you're gonna have to. Because as we talked about, she's so used to getting to the rim at Iowa. I just don't know how much she can get to the actual rim in the WNBA. She's got to develop that floater. Not that she doesn't have it, but she's got to get better at it. Just every part of her game just needs to get a little bit better. Her shooting, her rebounding, her assists, just her defense, just becoming a professional. Just everything needs to be a little bit better. And that does not mean her stats are going to be better, but just her in general everything needs to get better and will, because now she doesn't have, as you know, the schooling. That is an issue that people do forget that, but going to school and going to class and having assignments, and I agree they don't go to class like they used to because a lot of stuff's online, but they still have work to do. And now there's other work to do now that she's going to have more responsibilities in the NIL world and her endorsements, and she has a day off for the Indiana Fever. Nike's going to fly her somewhere, to go do some promotion. That's her new work, newer assignments. But, to continue with those endorsements and everything, she's got to be good in the WNBA. So her number one job still is to be the best basketball player you can be. And that's continuing to get better and better. And that's where her mindset, much like Kobe and much like Michael, that's her same mindset as, and I just think that given her 3 years, she's just going to be so much better of a basketball player, even if she's not averaging 30 points a game like she did in college, but just she's going to be a better basketball player.
100% agree. She's got to get better at everything. And then the last little thing I looked up was rookie of the years for the WNBA. Only 2 times of the rookie of the year scored 20 or more points. So I think she'll be the third. But as Vegas is telling you, 21 point whatever was kind of her over under there with Vegas.
Mm. All right, and now that's probably anything else on the WNBA or Caitlin Clark, or just lost Trev. I don't know what happened there.